My name's Kevin. I'm 28 now, but this story starts when I had just turned 26. My birthday that year marked a quiet milestone, one no one in my family really noticed. See, I'd spent the last 3 years practically glued to my laptop, building an app that everyone said would probably go nowhere. At family gatherings, while my cousins talked about their real jobs and my mom handed out proud updates about my siblings' lives, I was the background noise. The guy who still lived in a studio apartment and spent more time talking to programmers online than actual people. I didn't have much back then, at least not anything they cared to see. But that year, my app finally started bringing in decent revenue. Not millions, but enough that I could finally breathe without checking my bank account 10 times a day. I was proud. And maybe, yeah, I wanted a little recognition. Not a parade or anything. Just maybe a moment where they saw me, where I wasn't the family joke. So for my 26th birthday, I decided to do something different. I booked a private room at a trendy steakhouse downtown. It wasn't flashy, but it wasn't cheap either. The kind of place that serves sides in tiny cast iron skillets and has waiters who explain the specials like poetry. The whole dinner cost just under $500 for the 10 of us. I paid the bill myself, didn't mention it until the end, just wanted everyone to enjoy themselves. The night was going okay until dessert. My brother, Jake, 2 years older, insurance broker, classic peak in high school guy, leaned back in his chair, loosened his tie, and said just loud enough for the table to hear, "Must be nice pretending you're successful." I remember the way his words sucked the air out of the room. For half a second, I thought maybe he didn't mean it like that. Maybe it was a bad joke. But then he smirked, and the others, my cousins, my uncle, even my mom, just laughed. Not big belly laughs, but enough to let me know they thought it was funny. I sat there, fork still in hand, cake untouched, and just smiled. Forced, like someone wearing a mask that was starting to crack. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to make a scene. I told myself it didn't matter. That maybe they were just uncomfortable with me finally having a little bit of success. But inside, it stung. Jake had always been like that, snide, condescending, the kind of guy who thinks he's alpha just because he talks louder than everyone else. Growing up, he'd steal my Halloween candy, then convince our mom I was being dramatic. At 15, he borrowed my savings to buy a PlayStation, and when I asked for it back, he told me it was my fault for hiding money where he could find it. But this was different. This was public. And on my birthday. Still, I smiled. I paid the bill. I thanked everyone for coming. I hugged my mom. Jake clapped me on the back and whispered, "Don't spend all your investor money in one place." I didn't correct him. I didn't have any investors. Just me, my code, and sleepless nights. Over the next few months, I buried myself in work. I stopped showing up to family dinners. I muted the group chat. Jake texted once, something like, "Too good for us now?" I didn't reply. I figured he didn't really want an answer. And then things changed. Almost overnight, the app blew up. A well-known influencer posted a TikTok about how it made organizing her schedule easier, and within 2 weeks we were trending. Downloads spiked. Our servers crashed twice in one weekend. I hired help. Real help. Developers, marketing, even a CFO. I barely slept. It was chaos, but good chaos. The kind you can't believe is happening. And then came the email. A tech firm bigger than anything I'd ever imagined reached out. Said they loved what we were doing. Asked if I'd ever considered selling. I didn't reply at first. I needed time to think. But the offer came 3 days later. $8 million. Clean. All cash. I stared at the number for a long time. Not because I doubted it, but because I could already see their faces. My mom, clutching her pearls. Jake, trying to act unimpressed. My uncle, suddenly interested in how I did it. And maybe that was petty, but I couldn't help it. I remembered that night at the steakhouse like it had just happened. The clinking of glasses. The laughter. The way no one, not one of them, had stood up for me. Still, I said yes. I sold the app. And then the messages started. First it was my mom. "Heard you did well with that computer thing. So proud of you. We should celebrate. How about Sunday dinner?" Then my aunt. "Your mom says you're some kind of millionaire now. Incredible. Could you help out your cousin? He's trying to start a business too." Then Jake. He didn't text. He showed up, knocked on my door like he owned the building. I had just moved into a condo, nothing crazy, but new, clean, with actual space. I opened the door, and there he was, standing in a suit like he had somewhere important to be. "Yo," he said. "Heard the news. Pretty sick, man." I nodded. "Yeah, thanks." There was a pause. Then he said it. So listen, I've got this idea for a startup. It's like insurance, but with crypto. I've got the vision. You've got the cash. Let's make something happen. I stood there, blinking. He smiled. Same smirk as always. Same eyes that didn't really see me. And that's where everything in me shifted. Not just because of what he said, but because in that moment, I realized he hadn't changed. Not even a little. And he didn't think I had either. He thought I was still the same kid who would fold, who would smile and nod and give in just to keep the peace. But I wasn't that kid anymore. And what I said next is what changed everything. I looked him in the eyes and said, "You remember my 26th birthday?" Jake blinked. Yeah? Kinda. Why? I leaned on the doorframe. You made a joke. Said something about me pretending to be successful. Everyone laughed. You remember that? He chuckled like it was no big deal. Dude, come on. That was just a joke. No, it wasn't, I said, still calm. It was a jab. A public one. And nobody said a word. You made me feel like a fraud in front of our whole family. Like I was some loser pretending to be something I wasn't. Jake raised his eyebrows, like I was being dramatic. All right, if you're still salty about that, maybe you shouldn't be throwing around millions. There it was again. That smirk. That shrug it off arrogance. The kind of confidence built on decades of never being called out. But I wasn't 12 anymore. I wasn't even 26. I was a man who had clawed his way up while they laughed from the sidelines. I'm not salty, I said. I'm just not stupid. You didn't come here to congratulate me, Jake. You came to cash in. You think I owe you something because we share a last name. He scoffed. Dude, relax. It's just business. I thought we could help each other out. No, you thought I could help you out. He got defensive. What's your problem, man? You get a little success and suddenly you're too good for your own brother. No, I said, voice low but steady. I got a little success and realized who's been rooting for me and who's been laughing behind my back. The silence between us stretched. Then he said something I'll never forget. You think you're better than everyone now, huh? Just 'cause you got lucky with some dumb app? I've been working a real job for years. I've got a mortgage, a wife, kids, responsibilities. You played around on your laptop and hit the jackpot. That doesn't make you special, Kevin. It makes you lucky. I stared at him. I wanted to yell. To tell him about the nights I stayed up until 4 a.m. debugging code only to wake up at 7 for my day job. About the rejections, the times I couldn't afford to fix my car, the months of doubt and near panic attacks because I believed in something no one else could see. But I didn't. Instead, I said, if I'm lucky, then leave me alone and go get your own. He laughed. Well, you're really gonna do this? To family? I shrugged. You did it first. I closed the door. Slowly. Calmly. Behind it, I heard him mutter something. I didn't catch it. I didn't care. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. Because Jake didn't take rejection well. And apparently, neither did the rest of my family. Over the next few weeks, things got weird. My mom started calling more often, syrupy sweet at first. Just checking in. How's your week going? Then came the guilt. Your brother's really struggling, you know. Things are tight. Maybe if you could just. My aunt called to tell me Jake was just feeling left out, and that money makes people emotional. My cousin sent me a GoFundMe link. For what? I wasn't even sure. Something about starting a family-owned franchise. Every single time I politely declined, I got colder responses. My uncle messaged me out of nowhere and said I was letting success get to my head, that I owed it to the people who raised me to give back. Meanwhile, Jake started posting vague Facebook statuses. Funny how money changes people. Some people forget where they came from. Family is supposed to have your back. Guess not. And people like them. Family members. Old neighbors. Even my high school math teacher. One of them even commented, "You were always the smart one, Jake. Keep your head up." Like I was the villain in his rags to riches sob story. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. But then it got worse. A week before Thanksgiving, my mom called me in tears. Not dramatic tears, real ones. She said Jake and his wife had been fighting. That money stress was pushing them to the brink. That he was ashamed to tell me, but he needed help. I asked what help meant. She paused. 10,000. Just to cover a few things. He'll pay you back. I almost laughed. Not because I found it funny, but because it was so on the nose. The same brother who mocked me, humiliated me, and dismissed everything I worked for was now asking me, through our mom, for $10,000 like it was nothing. And what hurt more than the request was the assumption. The assumption that I was still the pushover. that I'd just do it. Because I always had. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. I told her I'd think about it. And then Thanksgiving came. I hadn't planned on going, but my mom begged. Said it would mean a lot to her. So I went. I showed up late. Brought dessert. Everyone was already seated. Jake didn't say a word when I walked in. Neither did his wife. My uncle gave me a nod, but it felt tight. The air in the room was thick with unspoken things. We ate. We chatted. My mom tried too hard to make things feel normal. And then, somewhere between the mashed potatoes and the pumpkin pie, Jake raised his glass. To Kevin, he said, "Our very own tech genius. May success never change him." There it was again. That smug, loaded smile. The table laughed. Again. And just like that, it felt like I was back at the steakhouse. Same table. Same people. Same smile. But this time, something was different. Because I wasn't the same. I looked around the table and saw it for what it really was, not family, not love, but a room full of people who had only ever seen me as useful or laughable. Nothing in between. And that's when I made a decision. Not out of anger. Not out of pride. But because I realized the only way to finally be free of it all was to stop playing the part they had written for me. So I put down my fork, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and cleared my throat. What I said next stunned the entire table. I cleared my throat, gently, like I was about to give a toast. Everyone turned toward me. Maybe they thought I was going to laugh it off, play along, be the butt of the joke again. My mom smiled nervously. Jake raised his eyebrows, like he was daring me to challenge him in front of everyone. "I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be successful," I said. "It's funny how some people think it just happens. Like it's luck. Like you just wake up one morning with a fat bank account and an ego the size of a mountain." Some of the cousins chuckled politely, unsure where I was going. My aunt sipped her drink. Jake leaned back in his chair, smug as ever. "But the truth is," I went on, "success doesn't change people. It just reveals them. It shows you who claps for you when you're not in the room, and who only calls when they want something." The room quieted. The laughter faded. Someone's fork clinked softly against their plate. "Growing up," I continued, "I never really felt like I belonged. I was the quiet one. The nerd. The kid who'd rather build something on a computer than throw a football. And that was fine. I didn't need anyone to cheer me on. But what I didn't expect was how quickly people would turn once that quiet kid finally made something of himself." I glanced at Jake. His smile was gone. "You know," I said, tone still calm, "I spent years working 16-hour days. Failed a dozen times. Laughed at myself. Picked myself up. No one here asked how I was doing. No one offered support. I didn't expect it, to be clear. But I also didn't expect that when things did work out, the first thing I'd hear was a joke about pretending to be successful." My mom looked down at her lap. My uncle shifted in his seat. The cousins went completely silent. "And now," I said, "after all of that, the same people who laughed are suddenly here with open hands, acting like I'm different now. But I'm not the one who changed." I pushed my chair back and stood up slowly. "You want to know the real reason I paid for that steakhouse dinner?" I asked, scanning the table. It wasn't to show off. It wasn't to pretend. It was because I thought for one night you'd see me, that maybe you'd be proud, that maybe I'd matter. But that night told me everything I needed to know. Jake opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "And just to be clear," I said, "I don't owe any of you anything. Not a dollar. Not an explanation. Not a favor. Not even this speech. But I gave you one anyway. Because unlike you, I don't believe in pretending." Then I looked at my mom, who looked like she wanted to disappear. "I love you," I told her. "But I won't be guilt-tripped into bankrolling bad decisions. Not from Jake. Not from anyone." I turned to leave, but Jake finally found his voice. "So you're just gonna walk out? After everything Mom's done for you? After we sat here and supported you, your own family?" I stopped in the doorway, slowly turned around. "Support," I said. "Jake, you've never supported me. You've mocked me, doubted me, undermined me. You don't want a brother, you want a bank." He jumped to his feet. "Don't twist it, man. I just thought, maybe if you really made it, you'd help family out. That's what we're supposed to do." "You're right," I said. "Family's supposed to help each other. But you're not family. Not anymore." And then, before he could respond, I walked out. I don't remember the drive home. Just the silence in the car. The absence of their voices. Over the next few days, the text came in. First my mom. Then my aunt. Then Jake, furious. He accused me of humiliating him in front of everyone. Said I was being cruel. that I'd regret turning my back on my own family. I didn't respond. Not yet. Because what they didn't know was that I hadn't just walked out of Thanksgiving. I'd walked out of their story, and I was about to write my own. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Because the real revenge? That was still coming. 3 months went by after that Thanksgiving dinner. 3 months of silence. Not one call. Not one text, except from Jake, whose messages shifted from guilt-tripping to outright hostility. First, it was, "You're not better than anyone just 'cause you got a little lucky." Then, it turned into, "You're the reason this family is falling apart." And eventually, "I'm done with you." Honestly, that one stung a little. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed what I'd known deep down for years. Jake never saw me as a brother. He saw me as competition. Or worse, an ATM. And I knew, right then, that I needed to do something final. Not out of spite, but for closure. For clarity. For me. So I started planning. Now, remember that steakhouse where this whole story began? The one I took everyone to for my 26th birthday, where Jake humiliated me in front of the entire family. Well, I booked it again. Same private room. Same exact table. But this time, I was calling the shots, and I had a message to deliver. I sent out formal invitations. Printed. Gold-trimmed. Sealed envelopes. Mailed to each family member personally. Inside was a simple message. "You are cordially invited to a family celebration dinner. I'd like to share some news with you all. Dress sharp. 7 p.m. Steakhouse downtown. Private room. No explanation. No details. Just enough mystery to pique their curiosity." And just like I predicted, they all showed up. Jake walked in wearing a smug grin, like he was finally getting the recognition he always thought he deserved. My mom gave me a soft hug. My uncle clapped me on the back. Even my cousin, who hadn't spoken to me in years, said, "So what's the big announcement? Huh? Getting married? IPO? What is it?" I waited until we'd all been served our entrees. Everyone was eating, laughing, relaxed. Then I stood up. I tapped my knife gently against my glass. "I want to thank you all for coming," I began. "It's been a strange couple of years. Ups and downs. But tonight isn't about the app. It's not about money or success or anything like that." I paused, let the room settle. "Tonight is about boundaries." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled. Calm. Unshaken. "It means I've spent most of my life trying to prove myself to people who didn't care. Trying to earn love, respect, and basic decency from people who gave none of it, unless they thought they could get something out of me." My mom shifted uncomfortably in her seat. My aunt stared down at her plate. I've spent years being talked down to, being laughed at, being dismissed. And now that I've made something of myself, the same people who doubted me suddenly want to cash in, pretending they were there for the whole ride. Jake leaned forward. "You dragged us here to lecture us?" I didn't flinch. "No. I invited you here to make something very clear. I'm done." The room went still. "I'm done pretending we're close. I'm done letting guilt push me into giving, while the only thing I get in return is backhanded compliments and veiled insults. I'm done with the manipulation, the emotional blackmail, the fake smiles. All of it." Jake scoffed. "You think you're so high and mighty now? That money gives you the right to cut people off." I looked right at him. "No, your behavior gave me that right." Then I pulled out a small stack of envelopes. Placed them in front of me. "In here," I said, "are letters. One for each of you, detailing what I'm willing to offer moving forward. Spoiler alert, most of them are empty." Jake reached across the table and yanked his open. Sure enough, a blank. He slammed it down. "You're unbelievable." "I know," I said. "You told me that before." Right after dessert. My mom looked like she wanted to cry. "Kevin, this doesn't have to be so final." "I know," I said gently. "But it is. And it's not out of anger. It's out of self-respect. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm just finally choosing myself." Then I placed a final envelope on the table. "This," I said, "is the last thing I'll give." Jake grabbed it again, faster this time. Ripped it open. Inside was a receipt. From the original steakhouse dinner 2 years ago. For $192.86. Paid in full. And a note in my handwriting. "This is what pretending looked like. Thanks for the motivation." I walked out before anyone could say another word. Never looked back. That night, I blocked every number that had made me feel small. I hired an attorney to draft a will, explicitly excluding certain family members from ever receiving a cent from me, just in case. I updated my estate plan. donated a large sum to a scholarship fund for young developers from underrepresented communities, kids like me, who had dreams and no one to back them. And then I moved on, started mentoring, started investing in other people's apps, their ideas, their visions. People who reminded me what it felt like to believe in something without support. And I showed them the kindness I never got. And not once, did I regret walking away. Because sometimes the cleanest revenge isn't a loud spectacle. It's silence. It's peace. It's thriving on your own terms, while the people who doubted you are still sitting around the same table, waiting for you to come back. But you never do, because you're finally free.